New life for me.
My students and I have really been talking about this in the classroom over the last few days, this idea of what it means to be literate in terms of hip hop. And I think I'll share with you what the students have been saying, because they ask oftentimes they ask better questions than I ask, which is where we draw our scholarship from. We draw it from them because they're in the midst of the world that they're interpreting and reifying. And so I always listen to them to get a sense of the questions that I need to be asking, because they're living the stuff, right? We got to remember that hip hop was created first and foremost by youth. It is a youth culture. So when we try to, it's funny when we say we're teaching hip hop, it's kind of weird because hip hop actually emanates from youth and it's always transforming. So when we teach literacy, and when we teach literacy with respect to hip hop, I think a part of what we mean by that is going back to the essence of the thing and constantly reminding youth what the essence of hip hop was as they continue to recreate and reify hip hop in contemporary times, right? So for them, this is really interesting. I asked the students, as creative writers, what is it about being a creative writer that makes you distinct from other folks that are listening to the music or are a part of the culture? And the thing that they said was, well, as writers, we are taught to critically analyze everything that we are receiving, which is something that a lot of the youth, they're not getting as much of. So the question for them was, how can they begin to help other youth be more analytical with respect to the hip hop that they're getting, whether it's in the form of analyzing the songs, analyzing the dance. How do we analyze twerking? How do we analyze Nicki Minaj and analyze what she means when she talks about feminism versus what Queen Latifah means when she's talking about feminism? And how can we bring these worlds together in a way that makes sense so that young people are really critically analyzing what they're receiving in a way that really makes sense in contemporary times? So when we talk about literacy, we're talking about, one, understanding the essence of hip hop, understanding its origins, and then two, understanding what contemporary hip hop artists are doing so that there's some kind of understanding that's more healthy for them. So it's really interesting what the youth are talking about. They're really talking about trying to create and recreate other young people that are more critical. And they're saying, we're not sure if that's happening in schools. So what can we do to help schools develop that kind of critical analysis for youth? They're having some really good conversation. So all I do is I just listen and I provide them with text that might make sense for them to understand. For example, when they're talking about, we know, and these are their words, when they say, we know that we have our own intelligence and intelligences that are not being listened to, that we can share with other youth. So then I can fall back and I hear what they're saying and I can say, oh, here's some Antonio Gramsci, right? This is what it means to be a public intellectual. This is what it means to be a person that begins to dig deep and understand their own intelligence, understand their own capacity to be an intellectual, a philosopher, a scholar, an artist that can help others to transform and understand that they too have the capacity to be intellectual, right? So that's what I do. I listen to them and I provide them with some of the history and the critical tools based upon their understanding of what it means to be literate.